And welcome to another edition of the Nerdy Agent Podcast. I'm your host and your video producer of the day, Luke Pedersen, with my brothers and fellow nerds, Josh
We will
and AJ.
see how this goes.
I'm the assistant video producer.
We think we're recording, but we might not be.
Am I assistant video producer or assistant to the head video producer?
Just to the video producer.
Assistant to the video producer.
So I was just curious how you guys ended up yesterday on March Madness in the first day, because I ended up $30.
Oh, he's betting on things. That's right. How about your actual selections, like the good old days?
I've heard that most people, speaking of just like nerding out on numbers, right? Because I love numbers. Most people that gamble on sports make money. Is that right or wrong? That's right?
DraftKings is actually cutting back on their commercials, I think.
I hit, guys.
They've been losing so much money.
Yep.
Listen to what I
FanDuel
hit
opened a TV channel, so
I had Texas Tech, UCLA, Texas A&M, Michigan, and Drake. The only one I got wrong last night was Kansas, and they blew it.
they stunk.
If Kansas had won, I would have been up $80.
They stunk. Couple of old friends in there though. Pharrell Payne on Texas A&M and Elijah Hawkins on Texas
We
Tech.
got to watch Hunter Dickinson lose.
Hunter Dickinson.
I was
lost.
really bummed
How
out
many
to watch
games did
Elijah
you get?
Hawkins.
40 minutes he played.
He's
great.
It was really hard.
He's really good.
I was like, how do we not have him on our team?
I know, and we like plucked him out of nowhere too. It was crazy.
It's called paying people.
Yeah.
How did you guys actually do though?
I don't know. I haven't looked.
You haven't even looked.
I was 12 for 16. We're in 46th place in the pool right now.
I got 14th.
What pool?
The D'Lo pool.
Oh, I'm not in that one this year.
I got 14th. 14 out of 16.
Yeah, AJ's doing well. He's looking good.
I boycotted the D'Lo pool because I was upset with the change in leadership.
Oh, yeah. When I stopped running it, fell apart.
Matt Dawkins.
Matt's doing a great job.
He is doing a good job. No, he emailed me a bunch of.
I love Matt Dawkins. Shout out.
Let's get into what actually matters. Which, I mean, March Madness does actually matter. If we're being honest, it matters a lot. But today we're going to talk about the Fed meeting that happened. I believe it was 2 days ago today. So whenever this is coming out, probably about a week. And then some people got fired. So we're going to discuss that as well. Just to start with that Fed meeting, because I think it will be a decently quick for those who don't remember, the Fed meets quarterly, every couple months.
Yep.
And they talk about what they're going to do with the overnight lending rate, and then they end up speaking and talking about where they think the economy is going, where they think their projections going. All of that ends up affecting how the secondary market makes decisions, and that kind of flows into what's going to happen with 30-year mortgage rates. A couple days ago, they basically said they're not going to change anything.
That is correct. They also talked about tariffs and the impact they could have on inflation. And you know what word they used? Transitory. Do you remember when they used transitory before?
Transitory.
Do you remember when they used it before? When they said, oh, all this supply chain stuff and pandemic stuff is just transitory. Like the inflation's not going to go up. And then it went to 9. And they were very wrong. They said, this is just a brief blip, like no big deal. Look, don't look here. And then it went to 9. So they used the same word again. Maybe they're right the second time. But they said...
the first time they used it, they were incorrect.
That's correct.
Yes.
Well, the tariff stuff is so tricky because it changes every day, right? Like it's clearly being used more as like a negotiation tactic than like in anything else. So it's like, as long as you give me what I want, I'll take these tariffs away. But if everyone starts fighting back and forth with tariffs, there's almost no way inflation's not going to go up. Like zero in the short term. Maybe long term, you'll be able to bring production back, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, a trade war is just not great probably for our international economy, and you're seeing problems.
Everyone loses.
Everyone does lose. And the last time, I know the president's touting the William McKinley, I believe is his guy. He likes to talk about who famously I think did or attempted to replace taxes with tariffs.
The external revenue system.
Correct. But of course, when that was happening, there were no cars, so we didn't have roads. I don't know if we had public schools. There's a lot of things that the government is now paying for. I actually listened to a fascinating podcast on what they're doing right now. And it'd be cool in this podcast sometime to go back and look at what Clinton did, because a lot of it is out of the same playbook of what they're doing now. It's just that the Clinton administration did go to Congress to get approval on most of the stuff that they did. So
This is the big difference. Mm-hmm. So the Fed basically came out and said they're going to hold tight in the foreseeable future, probably as well.
Two potential cuts this year was kind of the consensus. But inflation is still up. They said, again, they said transitory. So they said, we think that the higher inflation expectation that's out there, a good part is what he said, is coming from tariffs. But yeah, he definitely used the word transitory. I don't remember where it was, but it was in here.
That word.
Yeah, it's a good word. I mean, basically, it's just saying like this is just a blip on the radar. I mean, like if truly like we figure out the trade stuff, they're going to have some repricing and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily lead to long-lasting inflation impacts. That's what CNBC's reporting says on it.
That was kind of the expectation, was that they weren't going to raise or lower the overnight rate. I don't know what the expectation was going to be, what they were going to say about future cuts or not. But I pulled up Mortgage News Daily, and it's at 6.7.
6.71 today.
It was probably 6.9 a couple of days ago, wasn't it? So
Yeah,
it has floated down.
Going to move lower today probably as well. The 10-year's off by a couple basis points. We are still running at about 250 over the 10-year, so 4.2 is the 10-year, 6.7 Mortgage News Daily's got us at for 30-year fixed. So about 250. Again, we saw that go up to like around 300 right when the rates started going up at first, but really was like 150 back when I got into real estate. So definitely a different world. I think the Fed has also indicated at the meeting, they did talk about mortgage-backed securities. I don't want to get this wrong.
Like quantitative easing?
Correct. And I think they're slowing down the rate of the sales. So that's sketches out slow slog to unload. Oh, that's an older one. The Fed strongly wants mortgages off of its balance sheet, but I think they were selling
A lot of them. And I think they've decided, Fed to shrink balance sheet at slower pace until debt ceiling deal is reached. So they decided to unwind the positions a little bit slower until the Republicans and Democrats get together and decide what they're going to do with it. And that could possibly be affecting that lower drive on the rate too, potentially?
It could be. Presumably there's less sellers selling mortgages if the Fed is not participating as much as they were. So then it would be easier for incoming sellers to find suitable buyers. But yeah, that should impact or potentially compress that 10-year, 30-year fixed.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about with Powell historically too, right? So the high level, if you want to take all this conversation up to 30,000 feet, is like the Fed looked around and said, hey, we're going to basically continue to just be patient and look at the data and see where things come in and be data driven, but we're not going to make any massive decisions right now. It makes sense with the stock market kind of moving the way that it's been moving. Powell's always tried to minimize impact. And so when it seems like direction's going one way, he kind of hedges on the other side, right? So most of the tariff stuff people are kind of negative about. So he's going to use the word transitory to try to offset some of the concern and straddle the middle. So I'm not surprised by the decisions that were made. There's not indicators yet saying there's any sort of like major economic meltdown happen. Like there's nothing like that. So there's no reason for him to make any drastic changes. But as agents, it's important for us to know these things, to understand them. There's a lot more moving and shaking going on right now in terms of the way politics are now intertwining with the things that affect us as interest rates and whatnot. And so it'd be probably important for us to, touch on the next thing too.
So somebody got fired in more exciting news.
Well, I guess it depends exciting if you feel, but yeah.
And not exciting, and more, the Fed was a little just like, whatever, the same stuff's happening.
Yeah, more.
And then somebody got fired.
Well, there's a lot of change going on specifically within the government agencies that control housing. So the guy in charge of the HUD and the folks underneath him. So there's the Federal Housing Finance Agency Director. Both of them are very clearly working to align themselves with the agenda of the administration. A lot of that is around cutting what they feel is waste in different organizations within the federal administration. So they just fired the head of Freddie Mac, the CEO, Diana Reed, and the head of human resources for Freddie Mac, which the head of human resources is an interesting one.
It's a funny one.
Well, it probably just says like, we are not going to be that focused on human resources anymore. And so
they're probably not going to have that many humans to resource, right?
That's what
they're trying to wind down a lot of these different agencies.
Yeah, and even HUD has been doing things like firing all temporary staff. They're canceling grants. There's a lot of changes happening, and I think they point to a couple things. One, we talked a while back about the desire to potentially privatize Fannie and Freddie. Now they've started privatized. They went back into the federal hands when everything crashed. Then they are now being reconsidered. So that would be a really interesting thing because that would drastically impact how the lending process works, how it's backstopped, and the impact to interest rates. But they're also looking at a lot of these grants and things that the government's given out historically, primarily surrounding like low-income housing or affordable housing and stopping some of those programs. So I think both of those things are important for us to keep our eyes on because they could have direct impacts to the world that we work in.
It's fascinating. Yeah. And I think I'll just touch on quick because I did listen to that. The Daily is a great podcast.
Awesome.
They have lots of really great stuff. And they had on basically the Elon Musk of the Bill Clinton administration. So she was, can't recall her name, but she was in charge of a similar acronym. They had an acronym name for this agency, fired a bunch of federal workers, changed a bunch of subsidies. She's like, she said it was funny, she's a Democrat, but just when she was going through it of like how much old school waste there was within the government. Like one of them was they got rid of the tea party or the tea tasting board. There was a tea tasting board, which was basically formed because when the United States became a country, they were worried that all the countries were going to send them all their bad tea. So they formed a board to taste the tea when it came over off the ships, and it still existed until the 1990s.
What a sweet job.
There was, and then there was.
Full-time?
My wife would love that job.
Yeah.
She loves tea.
And then get this. So then I don't know what it was
Sure,
just one of these like,
examples.
cool, catchy examples. But then there was another one that during the Vietnam War, I want to say, it was very, very cold for the soldiers. So they did this massive subsidy on wool and something like wool so they could make coats and warm clothing for the people in the military. But then when the war was over, they never got rid of it. And so all these wool manufacturers were just raking in profits because they were continuing to have these like tax benefits and things like that. And they got rid of that. And then it became this big conflict because all these farmers were like, what the heck? We were making all this money on this wool, So there's a lot of funny examples of it. But she said, and I just looked it up, she said salaries are one way to reduce spending, but it does only account for 5% of the total spending for the country, for the government, I should say. It's like 336 billion is what Gemini just spit out for me. So it's still a long cry from the 2 trillion deficit we currently have. And we're spending 6.5 trillion and bringing in 4.5 trillion, I think is the rough numbers. And so they're trying to, eat into that 2 trillion deficit. But even if they eliminated every single federal government worker, they would only get like 15% of the problem taken care of. So there's other things that she was saying. There's much more powerful things that they can and maybe will do that would have a greater impact, like subsidies or like different types of things like that, or through tariffs. Like that is one way they can bring in additional income. If they're going to squeeze the expense gap, they can bring in additional income to try and eat away at that $2 trillion. Because I think all of us in our country would love it if we could have a government that is working effectively and doesn't have a deficit. It just seems like it's been a while and it's really gotten backwards. So it's interesting to see. But you're right, not wrong. I mean, the privatization of Fannie and Freddie would be a really fascinating experiment to play out. Most smart lenders and people that I know have said that they think rates would probably go up. Because the government does act, in this conservatorship, they act as a little bit of a backstop for the whole program.
Right. So we can, we don't need to dive into that the rest of the podcast. We've already
Privatization podcast would be kind of fun.
We can talk about that maybe
History
next
of
time or
Fannie
one of the
and
next
Freddie.
two. Yeah, that'd be a good one. In case you want to know. More will happen probably between now and the next time we record.
Yep.
Lots happening right now.
Who is going to be the definite over number 10 or worse seed that gets to the Sweet 16?
Might be McNeese. I know you like Purdue.
McNeese is fun, but I think Purdue is going to.
Can I tell you something funny? So McNeese finishes and they win, and I look at me and Caitlin's brackets. Caitlin's got McNeese State in the Sweet 16.
Oh, Will Wade. She knew Will Wade.
She's got him over Purdue.
He's a great coach. Okay, so McNeese, I think I told Luke this yesterday, maybe not Josh. So Will Wade had a lot of like improprieties, things like that. There was a FBI wiretapping scandal at LSU, all this kind of stuff, and he got fired. And he went to McNeese State 2 years ago
Started wiring money to all the players.
Well,
Probably.
it was
Well,
it was
it's
it was
NIL
legal
now.
then.
Yeah,
So
you can do it now.
what ended up happening is they were 11-23, I believe was their record.
Yeah.
2 years ago. Last year he came in. He had a 10-game suspension where they went 8-2 to serve after the LSU stuff. Then he went 22-2 as a coach last year, and they won the Southland Conference. This year they went 29-4, I think, and now he's getting the job at NC State.
Yeah.
So
By
it's,
the way,
it's
they're already
fascinating.
announcing that while the. Can you do that?
I think it leaked, and so then he just addressed it because they were like, "What's the NC State thing?" He's like, "Well, I'm not going to act like this is not a thing and lie about it."
No,
my
it's smart.
choice-
He shouldn't.
My choice is the current home of future Gophers coach, Colorado State.
Colorado
To the
State.
Sweet 16.
They've got the firepower to do it. You know who was so fun though? Because Drake's still my favorite story.
Man, they're good.
4 Division II guys last year in their starting lineup, top 4 scorers, and their top guy scores like 20 a game. And that coach is probably headed to the Big Ten as well, because the rumors are that he is going to literally go Northwest Missouri State next year at Drake, and then he's going to get the job at Iowa next year. Is the rumor?
You should take all those guys again.
Probably going to take. Well, this Bennett Sturtz is a junior.
Oh my
so
gosh, the rest of that team was hard to watch. I'm gonna be honest.
he was good though.
Oh man, he was the only reason anything was happening.
was good.
At the end of that game. Well, that's all we have this week on the Nerdy Agent Podcast. And as always, remember, be better.